Thank you. How are you? Good afternoon, I think, or good evening. Thank you very much. It's wonderful, Gabi, to see you again. Ariel, thank you very much for yet another brilliant speech. Now we know what the power of the pen does in your hands. Thank you very, very much. And thank you to Colin, to everyone here at the university. Thank you very much for an invitation to return to Israel, I think only 3 seconds after I just left, which is fantastic. Always wonderful to be here. Don't panic. So I hereby completely eradicate that title and change it to Don't Panic, because I love that. And that is really, as Ariel has already said, I think a very important message, but one that really calls for a very sophisticated calibration of our actions, because we don't have to panic, but we certainly have to act very quickly. And as we know, in any emergency, if you panic, you freeze and you don't do anything. You can't get it done. You can't get out of the emergency. We are in a climate emergency, so we shouldn't panic. We should actually do the right thing in a timely fashion. And that is, I think that is at the heart. I would like to, tonight, invite you to a little thought experiment, because this is a fantastic country in which you have proven so many times that the impossible is not a fact, it's an attitude, which is one of my mantras. And Israel has made so many things that would have been impossible in other countries. You have actually been able to make it possible. There are a few other things still pending, as Ariel has reminded us, but the trajectory of the country has been set. And so I wanted to invite you in that spirit to a little thought experiment that would trace the energy transformation that is already happening. It's already happening in many countries around the world, and I wanted to unpack that a little bit with you, understanding that this is the first time that humankind actually does an energy transformation that is intentional. Because the last energy transformation, in fact, all of the last ones that we have had over the 6,000 years in which we have been modern humans on this planet, every energy transformation before this one has been an energy transformation that was actually taken forward or led forward by technology or by a discovery of a resource. So think about the last one, the Industrial Revolution, in which we moved into the era of fossil fuels. That happened not because humankind got together and decided, right, we are now going to move to fossil fuels. No, it happened because we discovered fossil fuels under the ground, and then we developed the technologies, the internal combustion engine and many other technologies to take advantage of those fuels. So it was technology driven and resource and technology driven. It was not intentional. There was never a decision to change, to go from horse and buggy to cars. This is the first time, as was put in the video, that all 195 countries got together in 2015, and we can discuss the United States later, and actually took a very deliberate decision to change the trajectory of energy and to move toward renewable energy as one part of addressing climate change. Not the only, because there are many others as well. Certainly land use being an equally important one. But tonight I just want to focus on the energy transition. And what is amazing is that these countries have actually set an intentional direction and decided on a timing, on a deadline. And they have said by 2050, the entire global economy has to be climate neutral or zero net emissions, which is what science had established, but we needed the political imprimatur to ensure that science would be followed. And that is what is at the heart of the Paris Agreement. Not an easy thing to follow. So once they had decided, now we're into the next chapter, which is how do you actually implement that. And here a quick parenthesis that the UK, the United Kingdom, why is this falling? That the UK is the first G7 country, thank you. The UK, the United Kingdom is the first G7 country to have officially adopted now in legal form a climate neutrality target for 2050. They just did that, thank you. They just did that a few days ago under the vanishing leadership of Theresa May. And with that, I just wanted to excuse myself because I have a hard stop tonight because I have to be on the phone with Theresa May to actually record the legacy that she has chosen to give to the world. I'm sure you understand that she's concerned about her legacy, having made such a mess of Brexit, and she's really concerned about how is history going to view her. And so she has used the last little bit of political capital that she has left before she leaves 10 Downing Street to set into law the fact that the UK will be climate neutral by 2050, which is exactly what we need all countries to do. So kudos to Theresa May for that legacy, not for others, but certainly for that. And I excuse myself that I have a hard stop tonight that is totally out of my control. Close parenthesis. The energy transformation that we're now seeing and that is already underway is, as I said, it's directional. It has a very, very clear direction toward decarbonizing. It has a clear timing, 2050. But it's also, and I think this is the exciting part, it's multidimensional because it's not just about energy. And all of these dimensions actually reinforce each other. It used to be that we thought that the energy transformation or addressing climate change was actually just an environmental issue. Wrong. It is, in fact, it has a environmental impact, certainly, but it actually has many other dimensions that are already unfolding before our eyes. So I wanted to take you into a thought experiment of these dimensions. Let me do this in the following way. The world, I think, is divided into those who think in a very structured form and those who think in a more flowing form. So I have a daughter that thinks very structurally. She wakes up with an Excel sheet for her daily obligations. And I have another daughter who is very free-flowing and has no idea what she's going to be doing today, tomorrow, or in fact, over the next 3 months. And so, you know, I have huge appreciation and respect for both ways of thinking. So to those of you who are very structured, I just wanted to first give you the structure of what I'm going to share with you, and that is, I'm going to talk about 7 dimensions of the energy transition, and I'm going to organize them just to help you structure in your head. I'm going to organize them according to social, economic, and political dimensions. How many of you think that way, structured? About half, okay, or more than half. Now, for those of you who are free-flowing, my hippie daughter, for example, don't worry about it, just go with the flow. How many of you just go with the flow in life? Maybe you have a better quality of life. We'll see. In an event, 7 dimensions. And just to keep it a little bit in the easier side, I've actually decided that all of them begin with D. So here we go. On the social side, the energy transformation that we're seeing from fossil fuels to renewable energies, to solar, geothermal, water, hydro, plus many others that will be developed over time, maritime, renewable energy. think how that transformation from fossils to renewable energy is actually being incredibly disruptive. Disruptive is sort of, the word that everybody likes, and everything has to be disruptive, and I never know whether this being disruptive is actually good or bad news. It used to be bad news. Now apparently it's good news to be disruptive. But in any event, we are definitely disrupting the energy structure that we have had for the past 100 years, because if you think about the structure of renewable energies, it is completely different to fossil fuels. It is a structure that is much more nimble, it's much more flexible, it is much more adaptive to demand and supply, and it is definitely disrupting cost. So the fact that renewable energy, certainly solar, is now so much cheaper than coal, which used to be the cheapest and most dependable fuel source, well, now solar is actually cheaper than coal in countries even like India, which means that it is a completely disruptive technology that is beating out coal in many jurisdictions. The current winning price for anybody who's into electricity is 1.7 kilowatt an hour, which was completely impossible to meet with fossil fuels. The disruption that renewable energies are bringing are leading us into a thought space of abundance, because we always knew that we had fossil fuels, but fossil fuels are limited. Thank heavens we haven't completely consumed all the fossil fuels, and we have to leave those that are in the ground, leave them in the ground. But think about, what is the limit of solar energy? What is the limit of wind energy? What is the limit of hydro energy? Those are renewables, those are energy sources and technologies that are beginning to bring us into a completely new world that is taking us from a concept of scarcity about everything, because that's what we have been living with for 100 years, into a completely different thought space of abundance. A very, very different landscape from which we will operate, and the entry point into that landscape is actually being provided by renewable energies, because they are ubiquitous and completely unlimited, as opposed to finite and confined, which is the structure of fossil fuels. So incredibly disruptive technology, both in its structure, but also in the philosophy with which we will approach policy in the future. My second D, which is still on the social side, I'm still on social, is actually a deepening of access to energy. We have, sadly, still 1.3 billion people on this planet who have no access to energy, no access to electricity. What that actually means is that they're condemned to the abject poverty in which they live. Because without basic electricity, there's no way that they could pursue water that is drinkable. There's no way that their children could study at night. There is no way that women could actually cook in a shorter period of time. In fact, you will perhaps know that 50% of all women, it doesn't mean 50% in developed countries, no, 50% of all women, that would mean of all of us women here, 1/2 of us, that is the statistic, 50% of all women still cook on open fires. That is an appalling statistic. And what that actually means is that women walk for 3, 4, 5 hours to go get firewood. Then they walk 3, 4, 5 hours back. On the way, they hopefully get some water and are very often raped. And then they finally get home to make food for their families. That is abject poverty in addition to an absolutely unacceptable situation for women in developing countries. And it's 50% of all women worldwide. How is that possible? Then in the year 2019, we still have that situation. Now, renewables, because they don't have to have a big chunky plant with wires, that go out there called the grid. Well, renewables, you can put a little solar panel on any roof, on anywhere in the world. You don't need to extend the grid, and you can have electricity right there where you need it. Or you can put a small mini grid with wind or many other solutions. So we can electrify 1.3 billion people around the world, meaning that we would improve their, bring them out of abject poverty, and certainly improve the quality of life of women and children. Because renewables definitely deepen, and that's my D, deepen the access to energy by decentralizing the structure, that we no longer have a big power plant, and by doing something that is on the horizon already, but already seen, which is individuating energy. So watch this space, because we will be very soon at the point in which every individual on this planet will be producing the energy that we need wherever we are. Individuation of energy. Completely different paradigm to the one that we have now. I move then to the economic dimensions of the energy transformation. And there, how fantastic is it that renewable energies are devaluing, there's my D, devaluing the incumbents. And let me just give you a parallel example, which is Kodak. Does anybody remember a company called Kodak? Those of us in my age will remember Kodak. Nobody else does. So Kodak was a company that was 90 years old, born in at the end of 1800s. It grew to a whopping, because this was whopping at that time, 17,000 employees, and it grew to be controlling 85% of photographic paper. I know young people don't know what photographic paper is, but it used to be very important. So 85% of all of the manufacturing of photographic paper was completely controlled by one company. That grew to, as I say, 17,000 employees, one of the largest companies in the world at the time. In 1975, the digital camera was invented by Kodak. But they had no idea what they had invented. They turned their backs on it, and 10 years later, everyone was producing digital cameras, and Kodak was gone. In 10 years, okay? That is devaluing the incumbent technology. That is such a quick transformation of technology. And I put it to you that we are currently witnessing the Kodak moment for coal. That is difficult to understand, right? Because coal has been around for 100 years. And we have had coal as the basis of electricity generation for most countries for many years. And it's a little bit difficult to think of the energy system of the world without coal. Just like it was difficult at that time to think of photography without photography paper. Well, we have completely devalued the incumbents with renewable energy. And it is quite amazing that last year was the first year in which we actually closed more coal plants than we approved worldwide. The financial system of the world is decapitalizing both coal plants and coal mines, because it's actually become what we call in our business a stranded asset, which is basically a toxic financial asset that loses its value. And hence, we are in an accelerated race now to join coal to Kodak photographic paper. Coal has absolutely no positive attributes, absolutely none. It is the worst thing for the health of the planet, and it's the worst thing for human health, because air pollution caused by the burning of coal plus other fossil fuels has actually been shown to be one of the most effective ways of dealing with the fact that we have 7 million people who are dying of air pollution per year now because of the burning of fossil fuels, particularly coal. So a devaluing of the incumbents through renewable energy and causing huge economic shifts and financial shifts, capital shifts into the energies of the future. The second point, which I think is total number 4 for anybody who's into the Excel sheet mentality, my fourth D, but still under economic, is dematerializing energy. How fun is that? I am simply amazed at the fact that we are dematerializing in front of our eyes. We're dematerializing the world. What do I mean by that? Think about your little cell phone that was so rude to interrupt us just a few minutes ago. That little cell phone has dematerialized many devices that you used to own and that are probably somewhere in your whatever, basement or storage. So that phone, the little phone, has dematerialized cameras. There are still some cameras, but they're professional. Or those of you who are, really into photography. But do you remember that most of us used to travel around and had a family camera, and every time there was a family event, we pulled out our little camera? Well, how many of those cameras do you see now? We have dematerialized. So we have actually substituted cameras. We have substituted recorders. Do you remember when you used to go around with a video recorder or a tape recorder? Those chunky things? Gone. It's all in this little handy phone. Do you remember the video cameras, right? The video cameras or the phone or the music recorders. Do you remember that we used to have a separate system in the cars for GPS? I think mine was called a TomTom. I don't know what yours was called, but we had a separate thing in the, for those of us who are completely non-geographically oriented like myself, I had to, depend on this thing that would tell me turn left, turn right, da-da-da-da-da. Well, that was fantastic because it saved me from getting lost 3 times a day. But now I do that with my little phone. We have dematerialized music. Who still has your 300 collection of LPs, right? How many of us have our, fantastic collection, and what do you do with them? I mean, they took up a heck of a lot of space, or they still do, take up a lot of space, and then you had to take it out and put it on, and, the little needle, and clean it, and, do you remember that? So now what do you do about music? Spotify, right? Gone. Gone are all of those LPs. I mean, they're still there, and you love them, and you don't want to give them away. But basically, they are, museum pieces, right? So is all of the other technology. I can't remember how many generations of music technology we went through. Who remembers? What did we do? We did CDs. We did what else? We had an Yeah, do you remember? Oh my God, those tapes that you had to oh my gosh. Okay, so, now we've dematerialized music, or at least listening to music. And here's the other one, just as, a little example. We've dematerialized banking. How many banks can still afford to have, actually, physical stations, or what do they call bank branches? You see, they don't even exist anymore. Bank branches where you went in and you had a wonderful little conversation with the person there. Hello, how are you? Here's my check. Checks don't exist anymore. So now, banking is all. So we are dematerializing the world. And you can go through, many. Knowledge. Oh my God, who remembers what a library is? I remember what a library is. I love libraries, but they're hard to find nowadays, right? So we used to have a big building, with books, physical books that don't do this. They do this. And we used to go there to find knowledge and answers to our questions. And now, Ms. Google knows more than any possible library could ever know. So we are dematerializing the world, and we're dematerializing energy as well. Think, coal. Do you know that? So I already live in the future, so I'm going to talk about coal as though we're in the past. Do you remember that we used to go and dig huge holes in the ground? Huge holes. I mean, just gaping holes, some of them, visible from the moon. Gaping holes. And then go in there and pull out this black stuff that had to be then washed and contaminate all the water. And then that had to be put on trains, usually, and taken across the country to be then further processed, and then to the coal plant until you finally got electricity. I mean, how on earth did we get ourselves into that situation? And now, solar energy, right? Wind energy. We do not have to deal with this messy black thing that we used to excavate out of the ground. We have dematerialized energy. That is actually a very fun transformation that we're all witnessing. Sorry, I can get carried away about dematerialization because I think it is such a fun thing. So, but I will move to my next D, which is digitalizing, thank you, the energy systems. Because with digital technology, we're actually being able to improve the efficiency and the on-demand capacity of energy because it is renewable. Very difficult to actually digitalize coal or fossil fuels because you need the immediate response of renewables that are much, much more nimble and have a very quick response rate to be able to do that. You have then, with that, what comes is yet another change of paradigm that is customer-oriented. We used to have energy that was actually producer-oriented. We had these, big plants, huge, horrible plants with big wires going out of them and across the entire country. And energy was basically organized according to the producer needs. Well, now we're moving toward a customer-based emphasis with energy, just like we're doing with health, just like we're doing with banking. Everything is actually being brought to the consumer, to the individual. When do you need energy? What kind of energy? How much energy? When do you need your banking? How much? What service do you need? So you're seeing a process in which we humans are beginning to be in the center of the economic paradigm in many different ways, but including energy. And then we move to the political aspect, and there I also have two dimensions for you. Have you thought about the fact that renewable energy actually democratizes energy? It democratizes energy because think about how many conflicts, wars have been fought to protect the geographic location of fossil fuels, particularly gas, and then how many conflicts we have had to protect the transport routes, right, of fossil fuels. Well, by having renewable energy that is on demand and that is basically where you are using your own natural resources, we are actually being able to democratize the generation of energy and use it for our very own purposes, which disentangles, and that's my last D, disentangles geopolitics. And here, I really want to put a little thinking question for you. How smart is it that a country that is as politically brittle as Israel depends on the import of fossil fuels for its entire economy and for its entire electric grid? fossil fuel generating countries. I think you know which ones those are. So now, of course, Israel has been smart and hasn't bought or is not buying fossil fuels from those countries, but there are others that are selling to Israel. And what if those countries, the day after tomorrow, decide, actually, we don't want to sell to Israel? Israel has abundant solar energy, has desert space that could be used for this. How is it possible that Israel puts itself into a geopolitical danger of depending on the import of fossil fuels when renewable energy technologies are here, they're here to stay, they're here to grow, and they have never been as expensive as they are right now because the price is only going down. And this is the country of startups who could actually be dedicated to moving Israel very, very quickly over to renewable energy because that gives Israel energy independence. So that's my little political message for you tonight. So think about that one. However, having gone through these dimensions of the energy transformation, I would pose to you the following macro idea, that yes, climate change is urgent, that we address it. Yes, it is a threat. Yes, it is one of the converging crises that we're dealing with. Yes, absolutely. But I put it to you that from another perspective, humanity has already embarked on the construction of what I would call a solutions prism. And that if you see climate change as actually, or addressing climate change as being multidimensional, as I have just put forward to you, and mutually reinforcing, then yes, we start with the environment, but we definitely don't stop there. We can actually transform many of the social, political, and economic realities for the betterment of humankind, and certainly for life on this planet. Because my vision, and yours, I'm sure, is that we all want to contribute to a planet that is, yes, more environmentally stable, but also more economically stable, a planet that is more socially just, and a planet that is politically more peaceful, and there is no country that knows that better than Israel. So thank you very much. Thank you for going on a journey with me. I hope this has helped to give you a little window of thinking into a different world that we're all moving into, which is actually a very exciting world, and we don't have to panic. Thanks.